Welcome to Early Intervention Matters, the podcast that helps parents, teachers, and health professionals understand the diagnosis, treatment, care, and support of children with autism, ADHD, Tourette's, and other neurodevelopmental challenges. Your host, Dr. Inyang Takon, is a consultant neurodevelopment pediatrician, and she will provide insight through interviews, answering questions, and breaking down complicated topics. By sharing stories from parents and professionals in the field, we hope to make sense of what can be an overwhelming topic. Early intervention is crucial with children with developmental difficulties. Yes, early intervention matters. And now, here's your host, Dr. Inyang Takon.
Hello, everyone. How are you all doing? I hope you've had a good day. You're welcome to the Early Intervention Matters podcast. This is a platform where we discuss subjects or matters relating to neurodiversity. We have different guests every week who come on the platform. And today we are really pleased to welcome Carol Waldman, whom you'll be hearing a lot more about when during our conversation. We're so pleased that Carol could join us today. I met Carol on Podmatch platform, which is our podcasting platform, and I was so pleased when I saw her profile because she was the very person I needed to come on the show to talk about some very crucial issues about transition. As parents, we do understand that transition cliff. And there's a moment where parents of neurodiverse children dread that upcoming period where the child needs to move on to adult services when they turn 18. And your services that held things together when the child was younger suddenly falls off. And parents then find that they are now having to navigate helping to support a young adult, most times on their own. So I'm talking today to Carol, who not only has lived that moment, but she's turned it into a mission. So Carol now advocates very well for this, and she's going to tell us about her story, about as a parent, how she's navigated that journey and the challenges and some practical advice for us. So welcome, Carol. I'm really happy to have you on our podcast.
I'm so happy to be here and happy to talk about my journey. So, as mentioned, I'm Carol Waldman. I'm a founder of the Waldman Way, and I'm a parent advocate and neurodiversity champion. My work started over 20 years ago when my son was born. He's 24 years old and he was diagnosed with developmental delays in the beginning. And so eventually autism, and I had to navigate through all the IEPs, all the medical appointments, all the therapies. And we were fortunate to have some social groups, the school, the disappointments, the challenges, and the rewards. We eventually got him to high school and to college, and he graduated from University of Wisconsin-Madison, and he's completed a couple of internships in Washington, D.C. He studied political science, and now we're at the chapter in his life where he's looking for a job, and that's been really challenging. And so I started to explore, like, well, what type of resources are out there to help him transition into the employment world. There are some, but I just couldn't find them right away. And so I decided, well, I think I need to launch some kind of website and have a list, a resource page, and talk about my journey and find out which employers are hiring neurodivergent candidates. My background is in government and politics. I worked for the California State Legislature for 6 years. I'm a delegate to the Democratic Party. I've been on various committees. I'm very active in the political world, even to this day. And so I feel like with my advocacy, that is really critical right now on behalf of neurodiversity.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you. You're very welcome. When I was hearing you talk about your role in government and advocacy, I was so happy because I feel we should be having more of that. Right now in the UK, we've been trying to advocate for a different group of children with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. And it's been a long time trying to advocate for that. And we've been trying to get people in government to listen because we need them to understand the huge gaps in the service. So I'm really pleased that with your role, you are taking that serious from a lived experience, but understanding the gaps in the service. But we will talk about the Waldman Way. I love that. I just saw that and I said, yes, this is great. So if we go back to when your son was younger, what did the early years look like? Because a lot of parents of children with neurodiversity have gone through different journeys, and some of them very challenging, especially if we look back to when your son was diagnosed to now. Things are a bit different now compared to what they were in those days. What was it like at that time?
I remember at his doctor's appointment when he was 3 at the time, and the doctor was worried about, he wasn't jumping or he wasn't answering questions. And I thought, well, he's a boy. He'll eventually catch up. I'm not so worried. But I did follow his advice and we saw neurodevelopmental pediatrician. And she diagnosed him after all the assessments and then looking at his preschool and she observing him, she said, well, it's got gross motor delays, some speech delays, fine motor. But if you take him into gymnastics and physical therapy and occupational therapy, he should be okay. And we did, but we weren't diagnosed with autism, so we weren't really qualifying for any type of services. Like in California, it's called the Regional Center, and that helps fund some of these therapies. So we did it on our own. We ended up getting an aide in the preschool because the director wanted us to do that, felt like he should stay at the preschool. It was a religious preschool. Eventually, when we were applying for kindergarten, we thought, we were part of a temple in LA that he would go there. We're Jewish. We thought, well, that would be good for Andrew, his community. He didn't get in. And after that, I thought, well, I think he's bright enough. Is he not at the level? And they told me they just didn't think it was a good fit. They wouldn't have the services for him. So I was devastated my own faith community at the time. We ended up moving to San Diego with a good public school district. I went to all the IEP meetings. A smaller school district was a fit for us. I'm from San Diego. We were in LA. We made the decision to move back to San Diego, or at least where I'm from, because I needed a good small school district for him. And so we disrupted the family and moved. I also had 2 younger children. I have a daughter, and then I had a baby after that, my son Grant. And so there was Grant, Sarah, and Andrew. And so here we are. We all went to San Diego, and he continued lots of therapies, but I did a lot privately because, he didn't really get diagnosed until later, until about 5. So,
Okay.
yeah, it was
Wow.
tough, lonely, tough. I mean, it's everything that when you hear parents talk about, it's a tough,
Mm,
it's isolating. But you have to remember at the time, there weren't podcasts, there
yeah.
wasn't social media, there weren't as many groups and organizations that you
Mhm.
now, that it doesn't have to be as lonely. You can get a
Yeah.
lot of support.
Yeah. When he then got into school in San Diego, was he getting you said it was a small school. Did they understand his needs when he got there?
School did understand. It just again, it didn't really use the term autism. It was always about helping him, but it was like, well, he needs help in this area, whether it was in gross motor skills or in following directions or in not rushing through his work. But they were really good about including him in classroom like projects and they wanted to see him succeed. So I thought they were great. I think most teachers were really receptive and wanted to see him succeed. I think most understood. I don't know that everyone did. Now that I look back, because I think, well, why did he struggle in that area or with that teacher? But
Mm.
people didn't talk about it as much then.
So these days, before a child will get specialized help, so like one to one, I think in America it's the IEP. In
Mhm.
England, we call it the Educational Healthcare Plan. Was he formally assessed for one, and did he have one?
He had an IEP, yes, he
Okay.
did, and they had said Asperger's, and so that made sense. So we went with that. They were pretty good, at least in the elementary school level, with being
Mhm.
consistent and giving them what he needed. I mean, the challenge is in socializing and with having friends and being not at the same level, like in sports, was really hard for Andrew. Hard for me as well, because sometimes he'd want to play basketball with his grade level. And if he was playing like at a rec center, they would put him in a lower grade level. So I think
Mm,
socially that was just hard.
mm,
I don't know that they would do that now, but that
mm.
was back then.
And how did you, when you got the diagnosis, how did you feel at that time?
I was so confused and so uncertain, but also determined that, okay, this is what we have. We've got to work with this. And I didn't try to stop him from anything. Like I said, oh, you're still going to go to Sunday school and you're going to go to temple and you're going to go to Hebrew school. And this temple was very welcoming with him. But again, it was also the time, I think, that people were learning more about autism. He went away to summer camp. He went to day camps. I mean, with neurotypical children, I didn't keep them isolated in the house or anything like that. We took them traveling. We took them to New York. We took them to weddings. We took them everywhere. So important because it wasn't always easy. I mean, the meltdowns, the rigidity, the fears wasn't easy. And I would come home exhausted and wonder, like, that was not a vacation. But I also look back at that. Thank God he is a big traveler now. I mean, it really prepared. Oh my gosh, he travels all the time, anytime he can, and he's very independent with that. So, yeah, I think I would have been nicer to myself. I think I was very much like, you think, "Oh, this is how a kid should behave." But at the same time, I really wanted to work with Andrew and help him. So if he had a meltdown, we'd have to leave. His siblings are great with him and still are. They'll call him out on anything that he's doing or has done that's not appropriate. But if it's appropriate, his biggest cheerleaders. So, yeah. So in middle school, we decided to put him at a Jewish school. We thought that one of the things I knew was social life, that he was going to need a community. I mean, everyone needs a community, but I knew it would be a little harder for him. So I thought, well, if he's put in this school that's also academically sound, it was smaller. He did well academically, and he had a bar mitzvah, which was, very important. And then he had friends there, but as he was getting towards ninth grade, and he played basketball there, but when he was in ninth grade, I started to wonder about life skills. I thought like they could provide academic support, but it was the life skills I was concerned about. And so I go look at our public school, talk to an academic support case manager who, if he was to go there, would have. And I was so impressed with what they had to offer, like helping them, whether it was like cleaning up after lunch, or I mean, it could be things like not bumping into people. It could be a binder, like transition binders. And I was sold. I said, I think this is what we need to do. He was not super excited to leave the school. He was happy there, but it was one of those where I said, no, I think this is what we need to do. And I talked him into it and got him there. They told him that I think they'll really prepare you for college. And he had his sights on college. So he knew that's what he wanted to do. And so I think that was key. I also said, like, I don't know if you'll be able to play basketball there because it's more competitive in the public schools, but you'll find great teachers and I kept using the college on him. And that worked. And then lo and behold, his case manager was so good. She talked to the basketball coach, and Andrew got to play junior varsity basketball. And he played a couple years because he was there 10th, 11th. And when it was time for his senior year, he knew he wasn't varsity basketball. You have to be a very good player. And the coach said to him, look, I want to have you on this team, Andrew, because I know you want to be on this team. But you'll play if we're winning. You'll play only if we're winning a lot or only if we're losing a lot. And you'll help as a team manager. And Andrew came home and said, I don't know. I don't want to be a charity case. I'm not going to get much play time. And I said, oh, well, Andrew, that's all these kids. And I think it's good exercise for you. I think that it's good on your resume. And I really think they really want you on this team. You're great at cheering everybody on. So he did it. So then one night, he's playing and he hits a 3-pointer, which is huge, right? In any sport, or any basketball game. But when he does, the crowd goes wild. The whole auditorium, all the students do this wave. They start screaming. It always brings me tears to talk about. But like the ASB, which is like the leadership of the school, all the students started running towards him. Like everything stopped. I mean, the screams. And so it went viral. It went on various Instagram sites. It went on television within the school, the teach. It was just, and the confidence. And I thought, I know it wasn't ideal. He didn't always get to play, but oh my gosh, you had this. And it was something he take with him at sports. I learned that too. Well, I think I never did roll it out. I get pushing him, but I can see how easy it would be to say, well, my kid's at that level, why even try? Or he's not going to get as much playtime. But there is something about you just never know what you're going to do. He graduated in 2020. And I remember in the spring, they're like, there'll be no prom, there'll be no grad night, and no indoor graduation. And talk about like change of plans. I mean, that was all of us, right? And so he went with it eventually. And then he was accepted to the University of Wisconsin, and he really wanted to go there. It wasn't the school I thought of him going to because it's a big school, far from home, but he loved the idea of his sports and he wanted to challenge himself, and he knew it was a rigorous school. So we took him in 2020, in the fall 2020. We left him in the dorm. We were never allowed to go back because of COVID, and they would have lockdowns. He studied online the first year. He adapted to that. He had a roommate. He got to know his dorm. And then in February in 2021, he got COVID, and he had to go isolate in a hotel room for 15 days because everybody was getting COVID. So he stayed in a room by himself. And at that time, that was sort of my first panic, oh, how is this going to be for his mental health, and who's watching over him if anything happens? But I sent an email, all family members and friends, please contact Andrew, check in on him. And so that was a huge, help to him getting through this. He also had in Wisconsin, especially, he had some support services at the school, but we utilized a private organization that was new called Virtual Hall, and now it's Canopy College Coaching, that helped him with life skills, organization, academics. It was all virtually done, and we thought we would just do it for a semester to get him acclimated, but he ended up using it for the whole 4 years. And again, we paid for it, but it would be ideal if obviously the colleges provided that. But I know that's a big investment. I'm grateful we were able to do that. But I think also more and more colleges now are providing a greater array of services that you may not have to always do that. It depends on your years. And also, it was a COVID time, so it was such an unusual time. But he graduated in 4 years. He did 2 internships. He's done great. He worked with Broad Futures, which is an organization that trains young neurodivergent individuals in work settings in Washington, D.C. And after the internship, he really wanted to stay there, but it was really hard to find a job because there are a lot of budget cuts. And he's been home. And this is where the challenge is because he's interviewing for jobs and he wants to find work and he'd love to live anywhere but San Diego, like Chicago, New York, Europe, anywhere, right? And he has that where he wants to be in a walkable city and be out in the world, and I admire that, but it is challenging, and that's why I thought, "Oh my goodness, I didn't think you were gonna apply, like, as a neurodivergent candidate," and he isn't always applying as that, but I wanted to know, are there neurodivergent or neurodiverse friendly companies out there? How is this going to work? So, yeah, this is where we are. In Europe, and he's gone to Australia. Last year, he just took a trip to Australia. I've never been, but he'll use his money for whatever he saves, or we helped him out a little bit. But he just, because I know how important travel is for if you can do it, and if you really like it, I think it also educates him. He went with a group to Europe, which is still impressed me too, because he had to be with peers, but they were very nice. And then he went to Australia. A lot of the young adults on the former trip were from Australia. So he met up with some people and he just did it. It's interesting because I even knew like with high school, they have a certain language requirement and he'd met it, but not the requirement if he wanted to go to university like a Wisconsin or others. I had to really intervene and say, nope, he needs this. I felt like I was a lot on my own doing this. I mean, my husband and the two younger kids, I felt at the time, I mean, I had a couple of friends who were going through this, so that really helped, but not like I would now if I was in that now. I think there's just much more resources out there. I think one person, his case manager in high school, his academic support case manager was wonderful, and I would talk to her a lot. I mean, we were in he did like social groups outside of school. I think the big help was our temple because sometimes with the faith-based communities can be so great. Even though years ago we didn't, you know, we felt isolated because he didn't get into the elementary school. He eventually went to the Jewish school here, but this is a different city. But our youth group director happened to have a child who has autism, and now he's a young adult. So he really went out of his way to make sure Andrew was included on the youth group. Andrew ran for office. He was elected on the board. He also traveled with the group. He went to Israel with a rabbi and his friends. He made an amazing group of friends who, till this day, are still his friends. I think that was such a big part of his life and a community. And I think for me, I would talk to the rabbis, definitely. Andrew had his own therapist, so I would talk to them as well. I had mine because, I mean, I was like, how am I doing this? My husband is around, but he worked a lot. He traveled a lot. Sometimes he was in LA for weeks at a time. So I think that, there were times where I wondered, like, how are we going to make it through all this? But again, I would go to those people for support and friends. I definitely had friends that I would talk to. They might not have understood, even the ones that didn't have kids, but they were just, even a book club, they just supported me. They'd say, "You got this, Carol. You can do this." And I think that's just all we need. Sometimes we just need to vent, some friend to say it's going to be okay. I think that the more they know, I think it's a lot of this education. And that's what I try to do, especially, we have a newer rabbi now, and she knows, I mean, all about our families. And then Andrew's good friends with our kids. They're now young adults. I've educated the Jewish local day camp on kids like Andrew to help the counselors. I mean, I just do what I can to advocate for this community. So I launched this Waldman Way last December. So it's still pretty new. And I just started collecting resources of companies who have neurodiverse hiring programs, who are also like interested in hiring, and even if they don't, but who are more open to hiring neurodivergent individuals. Also, programs, because on the website are programs like the transition from high school, because college may not be the right direction for right away. So there's programs like Andrew had done. It's called College Internship Program. He was there for 2 weeks, and you live on a university and you live in a dorm and you have this experience with other young students like yourself. He did a summer program between 10th and 11th grade, but they have programs like that for when you graduate high school, and you can even do here. And in United States, they have a number of programs you can go to, depending on the degree of support you need. And then I added, there are college counselors who do help young neurodivergent individuals with college support and applications. And then Andrew worked with a company called Broad Futures, and that's the one in DC. And they're expanding as well. They're trying in all different fields to train and help young neurodivergent employees to succeed in the workplace. It's still work in progress. And so I've been going to, like, I just went to like a neurotech, they call it, a conference to find out how the tech industries are incorporating neurodivergent individuals. And I went to something in New York on law. Andrew had been interested in maybe as an attorney, like how that works with neurodivergent individuals. So I'm learning as I go and still staying involved in politics and advocacy. I eventually want to add more, as a resource, like what legislation is going on. There's so much out there that the more I think even legislatures or community members or employees are educated, the better. I spoke at it's called the San Diego Junior League, which is a group of women in business. And I was on a panel to talk about neurodiversity, and any of them work at companies, and just it's really educating, and then sharing what I'm doing and having it be more of an accepting, and especially I also like that employees are not hired as, quote, like a charity case. They are qualified. And that is just so important that I want to message out to. But yes. Sometimes some of them have gone on to 4-year colleges and then are also at home looking for jobs. Some graduated high school and tried out maybe a community college and it wasn't for them. So they have to figure out where to go. Some, if they have good family connections, can work in a family business. Some have gone to law school, actually, but I don't know as many yet. But there's a whole world out there. So I think that there has been a struggle, especially among young male individuals. Again, I'm going by the community and people I know, and often they talk to me because they're struggling. I also hear a lot of young college graduates are also struggling to find a job in America. So there is that, but it's really like making sure they find some kind of path. Again, you can graduate high school or just get not even a diploma, but there are ways to find work, but it depends. You have to either be registered with the Department of Rehabilitation. There's a cutoff. In California, the cutoff is 22 years old. So I've learned now, look back, I'm like, oh my gosh, incoming families will want to plan early for this. Just in high school to think about what are the goals for after high school. And sometimes you don't always know, but I think the more you know and the sooner you can plan, I just think it just helps. His mental health is good. I think he's very optimistic, very persistent. He knows something is going to come his way. He's had a lot of interviews. He is working with a neurodiversity at work coach. He has a good support system. He has friends. Some days, though, just like any of us, he's like, why? Like there was a time, see, when you're interviewing for jobs now, so much of it is on Zoom and so much of it now it's with AI and LinkedIn. There's just a different process. So sometimes he gets so far into the interview process, maybe 3 interviews, and if he doesn't get the job, it's a hard day, just like any other. And then the next day he wakes up and he's ready to go again. So I keep supporting that. And one thing that helped Andrew, like even in college, was he had a job in the summer. One summer, he's had an internship. I think whatever you can do in high school to prepare, if the college is the next steps, to make sure you sign him up for the proper college testing and get all the accommodations that you need. Ideally, in a college situation, there would be a career center that could be helpful. I think for Andrew, he was at such a big college, it was somewhat helpful. I just think there's more information and more awareness of neurodiversity. So I think that can be more helpful. I tell Andrew all the time is you're not going to get the perfect job right away, but whatever comes your way to take it and you'll move from it. And if you don't like it, you can change. There are all different ways you can go, but it's really, I think, also teaching your kid the persistence and resilience is really important to have. I mean, those skills, let them fail when they're younger, even in high school, whatever. Don't try to do everything for them so that they can establish independence. And I think that helped a lot with Andrew in college, that they could advocate for themselves. And so that can continue on whatever they're doing. I mean, deep down, you're like, oh my God, he's going to Australia, but you have to look like I knew he could do it. And I love traveling with him. He's my favorite person to travel with. He is on time everywhere. He gets to the destination. He doesn't overstay. Like you can go to the museum with him. It's like, okay, we're in and out. I'm like, sometimes meals, he's like, okay, I'm done. And sometimes I like that. Wait a little longer. But I think recognizing their strengths. And again, I mean, I knew he could do it, but it's always scary to let any child out. I have a daughter right now traveling in Europe, and, it's still you always worry as a parent, but I think don't underestimate. I mean, if you ask Andrew some advice, don't underestimate them, especially when they're in those formative years and through high school. Let them make their own meals, breakfast, lunch, if they can. I guess meet them where they are, but also encourage them because it's really the life skills too. Because you can do well academically, but if you're not feeding yourself, if you're not, can't live with a roommate, I mean, it is hard. It for any of us, right? With time, but it's really critical. They know so they can keep moving forward. And it's okay with friends, Andrew, you could have a few friends. You don't have to have the whole world of friends. Find your community wherever you are. That's so important. And there are resources out there that can be helpful. Yeah. But I think that this resilience and allowing them to fail and struggle has been helpful with Andrew as he's embarked the job process, because if you haven't done that, you could give up so easily, but he knows not to. He also didn't get into Wisconsin right away, by the way. And I said, okay, well, let's write a letter to appeal the case. And he had to do it twice and then he got in. So I had to show him, like, look, like you're on the wait list. You can get off. You tell them what you're doing. So it's important to work with them on that. I think even talking to the parents, like, how are they doing at home? How independent are they? I think your goal is for independence and to remind the families you don't want them to be dependent on you when they're, again, it's the degree of neurodiversity. It's not fair to say someone is more dependent, but I think if there's somebody could go off to college, it's really those life skills. Set your own alarm, make your own breakfast. And I mean, these are what we did with Andrew. Set your own alarm, make your own breakfast. He learned to drive. A lot of people are afraid for their kids to learn to drive. We're like, yep, you're going to have some lessons. You're going to learn to drive because you'll drive yourself to school. He takes public transportation, but he's not afraid of that. Teaching, I would say to the clinicians I wish that when I look back at that, our pediatrician, I think there was a lot of emphasis and doctors on what they can't do and what they're worried about doing. And to be sure that you're letting them know what they're doing well and how that positivity, because I felt like at times if we were at the doctor's, I would sit there with a list of all the things that drive me crazy or that bug me, or there was a whole thing like on his health and weight. They were just so many things that he felt, I think, attacked on. But we've talked through that. But sometimes I look back at that too. I'm like, what? Why are we so harsh on him? But I think it's, you're afraid. You're just afraid. You have this finite time to raise kids. And so at the doctor's office, you want that support. You're doing great, I mean, and to keep encouraging the parents for that, to push them for that independence to the degree that they could, if that makes sense. Yeah. Executive functioning is it's such a challenge. Yeah. And yeah, small steps with like the rooms, and organization, and chores. If you're like, oh, you have to do this and that, and this, take the trash, the dishes, it becomes so overwhelming. So it's really, hey, can you help unload the dishwasher today, or whatever, depending on number of kids. But they can, but if it's too much, it just gets overwhelming, right? And yeah, the waldmanway.org is my website, and then you can link to social media, and I have some of the other podcasts I've been on, and I'll add words just so that people can hear different takes of what I've done, ask me questions, or look at the resources to see, oh, that would be a good resource for my child. And I'm on LinkedIn, but it kind of connects to the website. But yeah, it's been a pleasure to chat with you, and I'm excited to continue this journey on helping people. We've got this community. We all have to be in this together. Thank you.
As we always say, early intervention leads to better outcome, and early intervention can only be achieved by early diagnosis. So thank you for listening into the series today. I know some of the things we've talked about today would probably have generated some questions or need to seek clarification. So I'm happy to take questions, and I'll invite you to send your questions to eim@drtakon.com. Thank you for listening in.